Hello and welcome to day 3 of the book reading, which is Guru Leela, Grace That Heals. The chapter that I'm reading today is a testimonial that has been shared by Arpana Nazre from India, and the title is Incurable to Being Cured. I have been in the IT industry for quite a long time now. Along with it comes the stress, the project deadlines, late nights, long hours, working weekends, sedentary lifestyle, competition, and politics. Everything you can think of that could affect your body in some way or the other. The longer you are here, the more damage it causes. If a balance is not made, it can even be fatal to your physical and mental health. Of course, there are good things too, like money, stability, etc. However, here I would like to write how the industry and the other factors triggered an ailment on my physical being. A couple of years back, I was in a very good project, but at the same time very demanding and taxing. Extremely stressful working late nights and a very demanding superior added to the woes. Also, it was a Canadian project, so most of the meetings used to happen late in the nights. This went on almost for a year and a half. By the end of the year, I started developing painful joints. Thinking that it was due to sitting for long hours in front of the computer, I just neglected it. Whenever I used to get up from my seat after sitting for long, my joints would be stiff and I would almost limp to even go to the nearest bathroom. Over time, it started getting worse. My knees would become swollen. I couldn't get down from the vehicle and walk after driving to office. Slowly, my ankle joints, elbows, shoulder joints, everything started showing signs of inflammation and pain. A time came when I finally had to visit the doctor. After the initial tests, the doctor suspected rheumatoid arthritis, referred to RA henceforth. I was hoping that it would be something minor and would be healed with a little medication. But as fate would have it, the blood reports confirmed rheumatoid arthritis. Until then, I knew nothing about it. Upon further investigation, thanks to Google, to my horror, I realized that it's a chronic disease and there is no cure for it. RA can just be brought under control with medication, and usually the medication would last a lifetime. I was devastated. How the hell did I get this? Why me? And I felt that I was too young to get arthritis. How will I manage the rest of my life? So many questions unanswered. The day I came to know about it, I was so depressed that I messaged Mohanji about the issue. He just replied, "Talk to Subhashri from London." I contacted Subhashri to know that even she was suffering from the same issue and had been on treatment for some time. She immediately called me, consoled, and convinced me that things will turn out for the better with treatment, lifestyle change, and of course, supreme faith in the Guru. She guided me to a naturopathy treatment center in Kerala. At the same time, I consulted a rheumatologist and started medication. He didn't give a definite timeline for the treatment and just said it might take long as it differs from person to person. The medication was also a low potency medicine given for cancer treatment. It had side effects like extreme hair fall. It was horrific to think that I might be bald soon. Even after the medication, when the pain didn't subside, the doctor advised steroids. I was extremely scared of taking steroids, but at the same time, I did not have another option either. At that moment, I remembered an incident where Mohanji had mentioned to another devotee that if medication is needed to take it, but offer and surrender to Mohanji, and he sees to it that it doesn't have side effects. So before taking it, I just prayed to Mohanji to help me so it doesn't cause other side effects on my body other than what it was meant for. Finally, I also took 2 steroid injections. The pain subsided, but again after 3 months, I had to take another dose. By this time, I started exploring other options of holistic treatments. I went for a 10-day detox in a naturopathy hospital in Kerala. Meanwhile, going back in time, when the RA was first detected in the first week, we had meditations in Preeti Dugal's house in Bangalore. After the meditations, we started speaking, and I happened to mention to Preeti ji about my RA condition. She gave one look at me and said, I don't think it's got anything to do with the physical ailment. This looks like more of an emotional issue which has erupted as this condition. She also advised me that I should go for Maitri method. At that time, I didn't know much about it. Since it was something that was given by Mohanji, I had complete faith that it would help. So I requested Preeti ji to do Maitri for me and booked an appointment with her. The day came for the session and Preeti ji just asked me to lie down. Mohanji Gayatri was playing beautifully in the background. I knew Mohanji would take care come what may. She started the process and we didn't talk much, but I could feel the heat in her hands while moving over the various chakra points of my body. I just surrendered completely to Mohanji and relaxed. After Maitri, when I got up, I saw Preeti ji sitting on the floor as if she was handling something of high intensity or frequency and almost shivering. She then slowly got up and came to the chair beside me. She started telling me what she saw during the Maitri method. First of all, your faith in Mohanji was so high that you were completely open for Mohanji to work, for his energy to work. The receptivity and the faith in you was so high that Mohanji's healing energy was at a high intensity. Since the energy was so high, I was not able to take it at one point, and I started shivering and had to sit down. Second, I saw this pain is because of a trauma that you're carrying from one of your previous lives where you had a very abusive husband. In that life, you had been physically and mentally tortured to a great extent and had died because of that torture. I could see that you still had bruises all over your body and burnt marks like those made by cigarette butts on your body while you were dying. This was the trauma which carried over lifetimes and it had manifested in this life in the form of this ailment. I could see Mohanji clearing the blockages in your body, and since you were so receptive, the energy was flowing beautifully through all your chakras. I was in a state of shock, but it was what it was. Then I realized why Mohanji says never carry the memory or emotion of any particular incident. It gets stored in every cell of our body, and we carry those emotions and memories over lifetimes. Since these memories became impressions, these impressions manifest in similar situations. When an issue happens, look at it objectively. If something has happened, if it's wrong, try to correct it. If it's an abusive relationship and nothing can be done, move out. Do not take it passively. Instead, be objective enough to action or move out. Be objective enough to action or move out. This way, we are not storing stuff. If you're feeling sad, cry it out. But then there is no need to store and lament over it for years. Mohanji says forgiveness of self and others and acceptance are the biggest gifts you can give yourself. And that is what the power of purity meditation helps us to do. With this one single Maitri session, I could feel in the coming days almost 60% of my symptoms of RA, rheumatoid arthritis, had come down. One of the days when I met Mohanji, I asked if I should get a Maitri done once again. He said you should check with your practitioner and if need be, get it done. I decided if one session can help so much, a couple of more would help me clear this issue altogether. Meanwhile, I did various other alternative things. I also went to the Bosnian pyramids with Mohanji and the Raven tunnels, which is said to have healing energies. Upon return, I scheduled another appointment for a session of Maitri with Militia from South Africa. By this time, I already had reduced my dosage of medicines from twice a day to once a week. Maitri with Militia was another divine experience. Militia would tell me then and there as to the results of energizing and healing each chakra in the body. She saw that Mohanji was healing me with a divine bright light, and a major blockage from the solar plexus region was removed by him. It looked like a huge black ball. She asked me if my grandmothers had a knee problem. I tried to recollect and realized that my paternal grandmother had knee pain and swelling for as long as I could remember. She had passed away a few years back, though. She mentioned that I was carrying her pain, and that is the reason I was still suffering those joint issues. She was hovering around me, and then Mohanji stepped in and healed my grandmother and asked her if she needed anything else or was it okay if she be released from this plane. My grandmother said she wanted to be released. So Mohanji healed and released her to the divine white light. Oh my God, I have learned two things from all this. We carry our lineage karma, which includes physical ailments, too. And with the Maitri, Mohanji is healing and helping the lineage also, just not us. How much more compassionate can one be? Aren't we supremely blessed that Mohanji is not only releasing us from our miseries, but also our ancestors from all this? My medication by this time had reduced to almost once in 15 days, or whenever I used to feel the pain. After all this, it so happened that I applied for the Kailash pilgrimage. As we all know, Kailash is an ultimate journey for a person in this lifetime. We were given a set of instructions of physical and breathing exercises to do to prepare ourselves for this tough journey. It was almost a month before Kailash, and yet I was not able to do any of these due to various reasons. Just 15 days before the journey, my son suddenly fell ill with a high fever. Later, I came to know it was a viral infection. It so happened that after his viral attack, I happened to fall sick with the same thing, though something like this had never happened before. Maybe it was another form of test, cleansing for Kailash, which Mohanji confirmed in Nepal en route to Kailash. I became very weak and developed rashes all over my body. Forget about exercises. I was not able to get up from my bed. At the same time, my RA suddenly flared up. My knees were suddenly swollen. My left foot was completely swollen. I was not able to wear my sandals. All this when I was about to embark on a physically demanding journey. I started my rheumatoid arthritis medicines again and got back to twice a day dosage. In spite of taking the medicines continuously for 15 days, the swelling didn't subside. I was getting more and more anxious about doing the 52-kilometer parikrama in Kailash. But somewhere internally, I knew if Shiva had called, he will take care of it. I don't have to worry. And I surrendered to his will. It could also happen that due to the cold weather, this condition could get worse and out of hand. Finally, I kept all the medicines with me and just prayed that whatever happened, I would face it. His will is my will. Just being there would be good enough for me, even if I don't do the parikrama. When we reached Nepal, we had a satsang with Mohanji in Kathmandu. During one of those breaks, when I went to prostrate to Mohanji, I told him about my condition. He said it was not just me. Almost everyone was facing some issue or the other in their lives before coming to Kailash. He also mentioned that Kailash was not an easy journey, and this was all a part of the cleansing process. Setting foot on the land of Kailash itself needed a certain kind of eligibility, and not everyone could do it. So, even if we were doing the journey by the grace of the Guru, we all had to go through the purification process we had all been through for months. I told him that told him that I wanted to do the parikrama and asked him to help me with it. He just replied, "You will, why not?" That was just enough for me. I knew he will take care and I don't have to worry. It has been my previous experience with the other Mohanji pilgrimages that although we are not completely physically fit for a demanding trek, in his energy and with complete surrender, we are different people altogether, highly energetic, no signs of fatigue, stress, strain, etc. It proved to be true in this trip too. Though we were in the coldest regions with low levels of oxygen, I didn't have any signs of fatigue or any of the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis. I even forgot to take my RA medicines, though I was carrying them for along with me. That was the level of energy we were in. At Yamadwar, I prayed for liberation. and let go of all that is not required for spiritual progress, be it physical, emotional, materialistic relations, things, etc. I did the entire parikrama, some on a pony and some on foot, without a single sign of weakness, breathlessness, or joint pain. Nothing. It was a breeze. How powerful is our Guru and his grace! How compassionate and loving he is, in spite of all our misdoings, helping us sail through the toughest journey like it was child's play. When we have faith and surrender, Guru's grace will give us the toughness and the tenacity to go through any situation. And that is what I experienced in this holy journey to Kailash. When I came back home from the trip, I forgot all about my RA symptoms. I stopped taking the medications too. It's been 4 months now, and I have neither felt the signs of it till now, nor have I felt the need to take medication. From impossible to possible is what Mohanji is all about. I am empowered. No amount of words can convey my gratitude to the Guru and the Guru Mandala for showering me with so much grace, love, and care. It was not only me, but even the lineage has also been healed. I bow down with deep gratitude and surrender to all the masters of the Guru Mandala and Mohanji for healing me from this impossible ailment and ridding me of it completely. The next testimonial is by Kathy Johnson from the United Kingdom. Divine Call of Nature. Having gone through 30 years of various gynecological procedures and subsequent total hysterectomy 10 years ago, following the respective births of my two giant sized babies, 10 pounds each, I had become used to living under the governance of my ever increasing bladder alerts. Wherever I traveled, I'd automatically mentally calculate my liquid intake and the very real prospect of a cross-legged stagger to the nearest bush in the face of a commonplace lack of public conveniences. Most often, my decision was a toss-up between remaining hydrated and taking the risk or deciding to hydrate. Remaining hydrated and taking the risk or deciding to hydrate to avoid a crisis. The latter usually prevailed. Daytimes weren't the only problem. This was a 24/7 vigil with sleep disturbances, a normal for me. Aeroplane and coach journeys were the things of nightmares. Careful consideration and planning beforehand were extremely necessary for me. When the opportunity to attend Mohanji's Serbian retreat came up, the first considerations that came to mind were all of the above. A couple of months before the planning of the travel for the retreat, I had the dawning that my next birthday would be six, a big 6-0. I had then decided once and for all that the time was right to get my problem sorted before I began my sixth decade and duly made an appointment to visit a female gynecologist in Manchester. Unsurprisingly, it was confirmed that I had a prolapsed bladder and required one or two surgeries. Another appointment for the investigation to decide which one of the two operations I needed was planned for the Wednesday after I'd arrived home from Mohanji's Serbian retreat. I have to admit I was sorely tempted not to attend, with the thought of flying 2 hours to Zurich, followed by a 5 hour coach ride. Did it have an onboard loo? Was too much to contemplate. I was traveling with my younger son via a stopover with him in Switzerland, and who, by sheer and ruthless pester power and a lack of real empathy or knowledge about the debilitating and restrictive condition I lived with, convinced me there would be a loo on board the coach and that all would be well. Mentally, I decided I'd abstain from all liquid refreshments and prepared to arrive at the retreat feeling like a prune. I could rehydrate in the comfort of my room with my lovely private end suit. Just as well I had planned ahead, as there wasn't a loo on board, the coach we did, however, stopped halfway at a service where I made 3 trips to their ladies' room. Before booking, I had also noted the code of conduct sentence that prompted those who needed to leave the room regularly speaking directly to me. During the satsang, would be best advised to sit at the rear of the hall to avoid interrupting Mohanji's flow, etc. The first satsang arrived during our first evening together with around 200 other attendees, so I made sure I arrived early to pick my seat at the back, not wanting to have elbow other like bladdered women out of the way. Incidentally, all of this particular retreats events, words, language was entirely alien to me. Not to my son, of course, who had occasionally uttered these Indian sounding words in my presence. So many expectations were basically zero. The evening of the first satsang arrived. Satsang? What does this mean? And I duly sat at the end of a back row seat. Unfortunately, as fate would have it, the blonde lady in front of me had a rather big fuzzy hair, and my views were so restricted that I found myself constantly bobbing up and down as I became more and more drawn to the truth this Mohanji person was speaking. I became very frustrated and also a little exhausted after such a long journey, but cannily spotted the next seat for the following day that I could nab. I'd get there early once again to avoid any drama. The following day's satsang arrived with me smugly seated at the end of the curved middle row, close to another exit door. I settled in and was so happy with my perfect view. I'd monitored my liquid intake and knew I could last about an hour having to nip to the loo before having to nip to the loo. After halfway through, my mind became distracted by my usual obsession as I wondered when a good time would be to duck out invisibly, not wanting to draw attention to myself or disrupt the flow. I was also beginning to cross my legs and, in all honesty, didn't want to miss a trick of what was going on. I was captivated by this person. He spoke to my own heart directly, speaking my truth and reassuring me about myself. I was transfixed and also uncomfortable with the increasing knowledge of an imminent dash becoming quite necessary. Suddenly, out of the blue, Mohanji stopped speaking and asked aloud, "Does somebody need to go to the toilet?" My heart stopped and skipped a beat as I shrank down in the seat and averted my gaze, praying to God no one would recognize my body language and realize it was me. God only knows how I managed to sit through the next half hour of the satsang, but I was puzzled. I wondered, did this person read my mind? How can this be? This has to be a coincidence. Blah blah, as I raced out at the end. At some stage later that day, we all toddled off for our conscious walking session in the glorious sunshine on the beautiful Serbian mountainside. Sitting quietly on a rocky outcrop at our mountaintop destination, my son and I were discussing the experience so far when I felt a gentle hand on my head as someone navigating the bumps of the hill around where we were sitting. I thought almost nothing of it and looked up and smiled at Mohanji as he gently ambled on with the group he was walking with. My son, looking wide eyed and directly at me, was gasping, "Mum, Mum, Mohanji has just blessed you. Do you realize what this means?" I was smiling, but really in total ignorance of the whole shaboodle so far. Nothing was normal to me. The whole experience so far was a million miles away from my everyday life. All of those people talking so freely about their emotions and problems, and this wonderfully wise guy walking casually amongst us all. I was trying really hard to process, but as the days wore on, my mind was becoming more and more mushed. I can't remember the exact sequence of events, but at some stage we were informed that the timetable for the following day was to begin an hour earlier at 6 a.m., and we were to go directly to the dining hall to drink a liter and a half of water, followed by 12 almonds. Really? Why would this be? How was I going to cope with the 2 hour yoga session afterwards? In truth, yoga was the deciding factor for attending this retreat, and if it hadn't been on agenda, I definitely could have resisted the power of pestering. I was genuinely distraught. My body was craving for some yoga, but I knew deep down that my whole week of yoga was in jeopardy with this ridiculous new instruction and the subsequent million dashes I'd have to make during yoga in every session, disrupting the others, etc., and causing embarrassment to myself. Darn it. I felt that this week was going to be ruined for me and that I'd return home as unfit as I'd arrived. The first session of yoga following our new water and nut regime was amazing. Yoga like I had never experienced, and from the word go, we were totally immersed in the feelings within, starting with the gapless breathing, again something new for me, followed by the traditional full body workout yoga session. I hadn't anticipated the overwhelming emotions at the commencement of Shavasana when a wonderful guitar sprang to life and the most mournful voice began to sing its tune. I was unsure if this was a live or a recorded performance, and I longed to know if it was live. Upon rousing, I saw it was the beautiful Natesh, but my taps by this time were already on full flow and thankfully from my eyes. I couldn't control my sorrowful weeping and was very confused to as what was happening to me. Luckily, my son was there to console me, but I was growing more and more puzzled with all of these new sensations and feelings that were overwhelming me. The following day was almost the same, if not more tears, and it was only during the second half of this second day during the afternoon that it suddenly dawned on me. Hold on, what's going on here? I haven't been dashing out to the loo. This can't be right. I've seen so many people nipping in and out of the yoga sessions, and not once have I had to leave the room. This is bizarre. Maybe I've soaked up all the water because of the long dehydrating journey. I tried to fathom it all, and maybe after the third day, I began to mention this to someone, some of the other women I had made friends with. Each of them smiled knowingly. Some even giggled, and I was dumbfounded. How could anyone heal someone else's bladder without surgery? What is happening to me? Who is this person? Words are so feeble a tool to try to convey the atmosphere during this event, and I kept thinking to myself, being here is believing. Being here is believing there are no words adequate enough to encapsulate the feelings and the emotions bubbling up so frequently unannounced. More and more, I had the overwhelming feeling that I was witnessing something truly sacred and divine, and I felt genuinely humbled to be enveloped by the grace of this person called Mohanji and his beautifully natural and unassuming family. One particular word Mohanji used more often than other tickled me, and it brought to mind the Beatles tune. All you need is love. It was Mohanji's pronunciation of the English word love that sounded like a low, which made me smile every time he spoke it. And this tune became cemented on a permanent loop within my mind. I became convinced throughout the remainder of the retreat that I had been touched by the grace of God and had even flesh hug from the same. How could I possibly explain this to the people back home? Where would I begin to describe the goings on and the wonderfulness of it all? I then began to dread the prospect of being without these people, this new spiritual family I had found. I also had the prospect of my second gynecological exploratory appointment looming on the Wednesday after my return home at that weekend. Would it be prudent to go along? Would this be an insult to Mohanji and maybe reverse my miracle cure? What was I to do? Who would know the answer? Would attending this second consultation back home cast doubt upon my faith? I was in a quandary, and towards the last day, I began to ask the advice of one or two people. My son was adamant and quite assertive in that I had to keep my faith and cancel the consultant's appointment. Someone else told me the answer was within me: turmoil. The final evening dawned, and it was my time to have a one on one, 3 minutes with Mohanji. I was more troubled with my thoughts about my elder son and his future life and recent near fatal accident of my husband to think about using the precious minutes to ask about my personal troubling decision. So I nervously blathered on to Mohanji about my husband and our life of striving together, ignoring the elephant in the room. Question. After Mohanji had delivered his reassurances regarding my spoken troubles, I thanked him. But just as I was about to open the door to leave him, I turned around and asked him outright, "Did you heal my bladder?" To which he responded in his gentle, half smiling way, "I'm always at work." My journey homeward bound was to stay 2 nights with my son in Switzerland before flying back to the UK. During the first day out in Switzerland, I was dismayed to notice a slight return in my need to find the nearest ladies' room, and on my return to Geneva airport for my trip back to the UK, I glumly noted the frequency was increasing. My 9:30 p.m. flight was delayed by 2 hours, which meant a dismal hanging around a half-empty airport, and once past security, I found myself dashing towards the nearest loo. Typical of my pre Mohanji cure, once inside the cubicle, I had a frantic dash to prevent an accident, and I felt utterly despondent and really confused as to all that just had occurred in the space of a week. Did my indecision to cancel my consultant's upcoming appointment reveal my lack of faith and put doubt in my mind regarding the healing? I was at a complete and utter loss with no one to help or support me. So I looked up from the cubicle and asked Mohanji out loud, "Please, Mohanji, tell me what to do. Am I being punished for doubting or lacking in faith? And by keeping my appointment, will this undo all the work you have done? Please help me." I was feeling very sad and unhappy and so unsure of myself and the decision I had to make. As I walked towards the wash basin and pressed for the soap, I looked in the mirror and suddenly noted that the song coming from the pipe music was none other than All You Need Is Love. I literally laughed out loud and smiled at myself and out loud in Mohanji in complete and utter thanks. My answer had arrived, and he had known all along that He'd known all along that I had that tune in my head throughout the whole week. How funny! God has got a great sense of humor and does work in the most surprising ways. Needless to say, I duly cancelled my consultant's appointment for Wednesday ahead and have never looked back, or have had to keep my eyes peeled for the nearest convenience. Once again, once again, words cannot begin to convey my gratitude for the whole surreal and ultimately humbling experience, but most of all, my reintroduction to the God within. Mohanji, I am smiling now, typing his name. The world will indeed be healed. All we need is love. To share my wonderful experiences with my nearest and dearest was really difficult, as I had anticipated. But the worst for me was not confiding in my mom. My mom is undeniably my best friend. She's clever, funny, has a wicked sense of humor, and has always shared my every significant moment. The opportunity arrived when she came for an extended visit last week. I bravely printed off my testimonial and handed it to her. Did I forget to see that she's an atheist? I left the room to let her absorb the info and came back in, sat down beside her, and looked her straight in the eye and asked, "What do you think, Mum?" She was very quiet, looked right in my eyes, and said, "It's very strange. But do you know something funny? My bladder problems have stopped too." I vaguely recall Henry, this younger son who dragged me to Serbia, mentioning the fact that once we were blessed by Mohanji, then our whole family would be blessed too. So I sketchily mentioned this to my mom. She responded with a bewildered look in her eyes and an odd. So I left at that. Later on, yesterday, I heard from the lovely Owen after um, lovely Owen, and after telling him this story, he explained the lineage facts, which became so much clearer to me. And having had this whole experience, my jaw literally dropped. My maternal grandmother had the same bladder issues, and so the story ends with my cure. I am so giddy with this new knowledge and living day proof from a hardwired skeptic, too, that I want to share it with the whole world. I was so happy going to bed last night and asked Mohanji if he could help me sleep without me having to take a melatonin. A long, boring story of years of debilitating insomnia and the wonderful melatonin solution I discovered this year. I boldly left the tablet to one side, knowing I'd be hurt by Mohanji. My husband followed me to bed and immediately about turned to sleep in the spare room when he heard my melodious snores. I had the most wonderfully deep and restful sleep since I can remember, and I can't wait to see if my mom did too. Thank you, Mohanji, for your care and connection with for us. I asked you I asked and you delivered, and my faith has been rewarded again, yet again. Please let your grace be available to everyone through the vehicles of all. We've come to the end of day 3 of the book reading, Guru Leela, Book 3, Grace That Heals. We'll end this session with 3 times chanting of the Mohanji Gayatri Mantra. Om Parabrahmane Vidmahe Shivattattvaya Dhimahi Tanno Mohana Prachodayat. Om Parabrahmane Vidmahe Shivattattvaya Dhimahi Tanno Mohana Prachodayat. Om Parabrahmane Vidmahe Shivattattvaya Dhimahi Tanno Mohana Prachodayat. Jai Mohanji.